So, hi everyone. Thank you all for attending our event today. I hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend. Um, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and as part of CoWork's ongoing effort to create an inclusive environment where everybody feels welcomed, valued, and understood, the Ability Works Employee Resource Group is very excited to introduce and welcome Victoria Hill. Victoria is the Senior Director of Global Diversity and Social Impact at Advanced Group. She has over 15 years of experience in human resources with a focus on DEIB, leadership development, and human resource management. Today, Victoria is going to be giving a great presentation on understanding and valuing neurodiversity in the workplace. There are also going to be some interactive parts of this presentation for anyone who would like to participate. Let's all give a warm welcome to Victoria and we can get started.
Love that, Natalie. And I love this background. So I'm just letting you know right now, I may have to keep this background outside of this meeting because it's so cute. So thank you all for welcoming me today. Hello, coworkers. I'm happy to be here. So welcome to Understanding and Valuing Neurodiversity. And I'm just really thankful to Michelle and the Ability Works Employee Resource Group for wanting to have this wonderful, important discussion today about neurodiversity at CoWorks. So this topic is very near and dear to me. So I'm happy that we're going through this journey together today. So I'd love to kick it off with our first question of the day to see how familiar you are with the term neurodiversity. So, do you understand what neurodiversity is and what it entails? Yes, no, or unsure? We'll give you about 30 seconds and then we'll reveal the poll answer.
So Victoria, it's showing kind of all three at once, so I don't know if people are answering all three and submitting.
Oh, okay, so just answer the first one that you see.
Got it.
And then we'll answer the other two as we talk today. So the first one you see on your screen, do you understand what neurodiversity is and what it entails? And I do see in the chat as well, I see unsure, I see yes. All right, so can we reveal the answers to the poll? All right, so this is great, and thank you for being honest. I see 33% say yes, 27% said no, and 40% are kind of unsure. So thank you for that honesty. I appreciate that. We'll answer two more polls as we go along today. So when we talk about neurodiversity, you can think of it as like the root word neural, right? And neural really translates to like our nervous system, which affects our brain. And diversity is a term we probably already know, which means human differences. And so if we put those two words together, simply put, it's brain differences. So I want to play a quick video for you all so that it kind of sets the stage as to what we're talking about today when we say neurodiversity.
We are all
Somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear it.
And that's wonderful.
Or in the chat.
Some differences are easy to see. Height, hairstyle, gender, eye color, and so on. Other differences can't be seen. Our favorite foods, fears, or special skills. Interestingly, the way we see the world is also different. For instance, what do you see in this drawing? Most people see a duck, but some of you might have seen a rabbit. Whichever you saw, you are correct. This is just a trick drawing to show you that all brains work differently. The brain is your body's computer. It works differently for all of us and controls how you learn. That's why we are all good at different things. How you feel, which is why we all feel different emotions. and how you communicate. Sometimes the brain is connected in such a way it affects the senses and how we perceive and read situations and interactions. This is
I am going to stop it there. And if you all can put in chat for me, so we'll be doing a lot of chat today. So what do you all think about that video? It said we feel differently, we see the world differently, we experience things differently. What do you all think about that? You can just put it in chat. Do you agree? I see, yep. Very true. Agree. Yeah, it's so true, right? We all experience, we all interact with, we all interpret the world in unique ways. And when I say world, I truly mean the entire world, right? Globally, internationally. Just like coworks, you all have employees in like all 50 states, right? And I'm sure every single employee interprets the world in their own unique way. So this course today will deepen our understanding of neurodiversity. Thank you for putting that in chat. When I'm looking this way, I'm looking at the chat. So thank you. So we'll deepen our understanding of neurodiversity. So for those of you who said no and unsure, we are going to hear all about learning and thinking differences today. We'll recognize the differences in each of our brains, right? And develop a wider view of what we call normal, right? Which will help us improve communication, development, and our leadership style. We'll learn how to listen and engage respectfully, right, for a more inclusive workplace. And as we become more accepting, it'll help us as employees, right, to thrive, right? And the employees that work beside us, it'll help them thrive because the more awareness we have, the better everyone can feel about the working environment or the world, right? So I want to thank your executive leadership team for really recognizing this important topic. Honestly, that's why CoWorks, I know on your website, you say you're a different kind of staffing company. And that is true. This proves it by having this type of discussion today. Like you care about your people. And we recognize that employees are experiencing anxiety or panic attacks or even depression, right? And various other neurodiversity areas, but suffering in silence. And some people are too embarrassed to talk to anyone about it. You know, they may feel like they'll be ignored or ridiculed, right? Or maybe even feeling ashamed or alone. You know, quite frankly, sometimes people don't feel safe to communicate about what's affecting them at work. And we don't just shut off everything when we come to work, right? We bring everything with us. So that's why we all are having this conversation today. I want us to continue to have this conversation after today because we want to make sure people don't suffer in silence, right? We want to raise awareness and then take action. So if you raise awareness and don't take action, then you might as well not do anything, right? So you want to raise awareness and then you want to take action. And that's how you support people, right? So being an inclusive human being, it starts with neuro, brain knowledge. And you don't have to be a brain surgeon. So you'll hear me say that a lot, but you don't have to be a brain surgeon to understand neural or the brain human differences. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So the term neurodiversity refers to an infinite range of differences in the individual human brain function and our behavioral traits. So basically, there's no standard brain. We all think and learn differently, period, right? We have different attention spans, we experience different moods, and that's what's completely normal, right? It's normal to have differences in our brains just like we all look different. Now, I can't see everybody, but I'm 99.9% sure that we all look differently, just like we all have different fingerprints, right? And every one of us faces unique struggles in the workplace. So it's important to understand and respect neurodiversity or brain differences, right? So we can start recognizing the huge benefits that our diverse brains bring to the table. So I want to play another video for you. And when you watch this video, it's a little funny, but I want you to watch it and hear it with your heart. And you'll know what I mean when you see it. It's a very short video. Sometimes you're a caterpillar.
In the garden, there's a caterpillar and a snail, and they're basically best friends. They hang out 24/7. They do dinner, movie nights, crafts. Oh, and they're like really into cosplay on top of like whatever else caterpillars and snails do, like eat leaves or something. Anyways, one day they're on their way to a party that's right outside the garden, and they have to go through the fence to get there. So the caterpillar goes right through, but the snail is stuck. Her shell is just too big and it won't fit under the wire. So she's like, crap, I can't get through. Maybe like, can you lift up the wire, or maybe we can build a little bridge or something? And the caterpillar's like, dude, just go under. But she can't. There's just no way that the shell is gonna fit. And the caterpillar's like, go under, come on, we're gonna be late and I'm trying to hook up with that super ladybug. But it's not happening. The shell will not fit under the wire. And at this point, Snail's getting kind of frustrated because it's not like she doesn't want to go to the party, but for some reason, Caterpillar just isn't getting it. Yeah, it's not that easy for me. I just can't crawl under the fence like you can, so I would really appreciate your help here. Maybe we can like go a different way, and this just like sets the caterpillar off. What the heck? Just because I can crawl under stuff doesn't mean that I have it easy. Do you even know what it's like to have 16 feet? You don't, because finding shoes is a complete nightmare. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not saying you have it easy. I'm just saying I can't go under the fence because of my shell. That's it. I have a shell and you don't. And there's some stuff that's easier for you that's harder for me. Just like I don't know jack about finding shoes because I don't have feet. Caterpillar thinks about this for a second and realizes the snail is right. I mean, he's never had to think about shells or slimy trails, and that's a privilege that the snail has never had because she has to think about that stuff all the time. That's part of being a snail. And it's kind of like that for everyone, right? I mean, we all have our own struggles and challenges, and some of them are small and some of them are huge and really unfair and beyond our control. And a lot of the time, it can be hard to see what someone else deals with because you've never been in their shoes or shell. Like maybe you're gay or trans, have a disability or different religion, or of course the obvious one, you're a member of a different race. I don't know what it's like to be you, and you don't know what it's like to be me. So it's really important to stop and try and see the other side so we can help each other overcome those obstacles together. It's like sometimes you're the snail and sometimes you're the caterpillar. Oh yeah, okay, so then the snail and the caterpillar figured out that if they went to the other side of the garden, they could get through a little break in the fence. And while it took a little longer to get to the party, they did the trip together, which is what made it so great. So they got to the party, the caterpillar hooked up with the ladybug, snail taught everyone how to do the wobble, and the party was everything. The end.
Okay, so I want you all to tell me in chat, what did you think about that video? What lessons did you gain from that video, if any? Be inclusive, Rocco, thank you. I mean, really, you could just drop the mic right there with what Rocco said. Be inclusive, right? Simple. It sounds very simple, right? Yes. Yes, Corey. Yep. Always step outside your perspective. Yes. Kobe, perspective is important. Christy, yeah. Respect the differences in everyone and try to have a better understanding. Yeah. And then Bianca, thank you, that we all are different and we all have different challenges. That's exactly right. And I'm reading all of them. Sorry if I don't hit every single one, but I definitely see them. Understand people and look for options. Sarah, I love that because in the video, the caterpillar the caterpillar was upset, right? And that's human nature, even though he's a caterpillar, but that's human nature, right? People get upset first when we don't understand why someone can't take the route we take, right? Because we naturally, and when I say naturally, because that means All of us. We just think and hope that people can do exactly the same thing we do. We want people to go down that same path as us, but everyone can't because, again, we're different. And oh yeah, I like this one. It says unknown user, but whoever put that in about make sure to accommodate one another's needs. Yeah, because you do. You can't, if someone can't fit under the fence, and I know it's kind of a funny video, but it really tells a life story. Like if someone can't fit under the fence, or if someone can't get up some stairs, or if someone in a meeting sees something differently than you do, you have to step back and think, okay, wait a minute. How can we both get there and be productive together? Because when we're at work, we're working together, right? We're not in silos all the time. We have to work together. And so how can we both get there, together and both be successful? And that's where we have to like step back a little bit and just think from another person's perspective. Because the video said, you don't know what it's like to be me, and I don't know what it's like to be you. And so let's just think about that when we think about neurodiversity in those terms. Thank you all. You have some very good comments in the chat. Having an open mind and understanding others more. Thank you. Thank you. And keep them coming because we're going to be in the chat all today. So let's meet someone. Someone I want you to meet. It's John. So let me tell you a little bit about John. He's a wizard at data analytics. His combination of mathematical ability and software development skill is highly unusual. His CV or his resume features 2 master's degrees, both with honors. He has the best references from previous employers and peers in the industry. So, hearing this about John, would you hire him or place him for a position of data analytics? Just what you see on the screen now, knowing that he has 2 masters and all that. Would you want to place him in one of your clients' companies or work for Coworks? Just knowing that. So I'm seeing yeses all in the chat based on his skills. Yes, okay. Great. You all are good. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Let me tell you a little bit more about John. So here's like the rest of his story. All right. So he wears headphones all the time. And when people talk to him, he doesn't look right at them. He leans over every 10 minutes or so to tighten his shoelaces. He can't concentrate when they're loose. But when they're tight, though, John is the department's most productive employee. He's hardworking. He never wants to take breaks, although his assigned workplace buddy has finally persuaded him to do so. He doesn't really enjoy them. Okay, so would you all still hire John, knowing the rest of his story? Good, good. Seeing your comments. Thank you. Thank you, Bonnie. Yep. Yes, absolutely. So reading your comments, like John seems like someone we would have to work with and learn to accept some of his differences. Yes. And special training, accommodations seem reasonable. So I'm seeing your comments, great. Maybe he has a little bit of OCD. We can still work with him, great. So this is so funny, but I've done this training other times and I've had people say, well, maybe we can get John some like slip-on shoes so he doesn't have to lean over and tie them every 10 minutes. And so what do you all think about that? I've had different responses to that answer. What do you all think? Would that be a reasonable accommodation? Like some slip-on shoes? I see yes. Did that work for him? Okay, so Michael, your answer is what I've heard before. He may like to tie his shoes. He may like those type of shoes. So, we may think, okay, well, we'll accommodate and get him some slip-on shoes, but maybe he likes to bend over and tie his shoelaces. We don't know, right? But it does say that he's the most productive employee that they have, as long as he's able to tie his shoelaces, wear his headphones, and which I saw in the chat earlier, those are pretty reasonable accommodations to have a productive employee, right? So it's just about learning the employee. And he really doesn't like to take breaks, right? His buddy convinced him to do so, but he really doesn't like it. And those are things that we can work with. That doesn't stop business in any way. That he's still productive, business is moving forward. And if he's happy, then we're happy, right? If he's happy, he's productive, what more do we need to do, right? So thank you. Thank you for those comments. I'm still seeing them coming in. Thank you. All right. So we met John, and remember, there's no standard brain. So even if there's some things that we say we might not have done in that situation, or we might not do, John does it because he has brain differences, right? Just like we have brain differences. Everybody has brain differences. So, neurodiversity is often unheard of and misunderstood. Over the last few years, we've been hearing about it more and more, but without accurate knowledge of neurodivergent people, then we make assumptions, right? So I want to introduce us, for those who are not familiar or unsure about the term, I want to introduce some terms, and those of you who are familiar, this is maybe a reintroduction to some of the terms. So neurodivergent, again, it's a relatively newer term, right? It simply means someone who thinks differently from the majority, right? Neurotypical, it means the opposite, whose brain behaves in the same way as the majority of society. So, if you think about it, there's no standard brain, right? All brains are different. So neurotypical, it says the majority, but how do we know, right? Because we're all different. What is normal? What is typical, right? So we have to just think about that, right? Because we all have differences. And keep in mind, there's no stable or universally understood concept of normal. In fact, normal perceptions and behaviors, they vary differently depending on factors such as someone's culture, right? Or location. For example, in some cultures, direct eye contact is expected, while in others, it's considered rude, right? So normal or typical is different depending on who you talk to, where they're from, etc. And then neural minority, just like the name suggests, is any group that differs from the majority in behavioral traits or brain function. And then neurodiversity, which is the name of this course, is the idea that it's normal and acceptable for people to have brains that function differently from one another. So that's normal to me, right? That we're all diverse in our brains. And this term was actually, I'm not going to tell you. I want you all to put in chat for me. When do you think the term neurodiversity was coined? Don't anyone Google it. Just put it in chat. What do you think? What year? 1989, 2014, 2002, 2024, within the last 15 years. Okay. Let's see who's about the closest. I don't see the actual number yet, but I do see someone who's close. So I'll give someone the prize of kudos because I don't have an actual prize to hand you. But Alex, you're the closest because it was coined back in 1998 by a woman named Judy Singer, who was autistic herself. And I told you that sometimes people suffer in silence. Why? Right? Because for too long, neurodiversity, this term, has been poorly understood, right? It's been stereotyped and even ignored. So thinking styles such as maybe dyslexia or autism have often been characterized only as deficits. But we need to look at the benefits, right? The superpowers. So that's why on our neurodiversity journey today, we're trying to deepen our understanding, right? Learning about neurodiversity, even though you're not a brain surgeon, can help you move like the focus from impairments to our abilities, right? And our superpowers. So we want to understand and embrace neurodiversity. All right, so let me show you the spectrum of neurodiversity. You see it on your screen. And so you might be familiar with some of the neurological diversity on the screen, like depression, right? ADHD. So those are terms that we've heard before. Dyslexia, autism, Down syndrome, bipolar, OCD. I saw that in the chat earlier, or Tourette's syndrome. Those are like familiar to us. And they're all different, right? And even the circles that you see in the different colors have differences within those circles, right? So they do have one similarity. They affect some, but not all thinking skills. So understanding neurodiversity means recognizing and respecting these differences in our brain, just like we notice the difference in our hair or our eye or our skin color, but we respect each other equally, right? So it's huge benefits involved with understanding neurodiversity. And among adults, dyslexia is probably the most common type, followed by ADHD. Right? And so those numbers fluctuate because surveys and polls are always different. All right. So okay, great. I see in chat. Christy, thank you. Asked the question, and I see Ashlyn answered it. Perfect. Okay, so here's poll number 2 that we'll put on your screen. And I want you all to answer, how common is neurodivergence in your opinion? So check which box you think. 25%, 15%, 1%, 72%. Now that you saw that like infinity spectrum, how common do you think it is? Okay, so I'm seeing the responses in chat. So good. Let's take about 30 more seconds. Thank you all for answering these polls. Okay, so let's stop the poll and reveal. Okay, so the majority of you said 72%. So I'm starting with the bottom. No one said 1%. So that's good. You all know. 13% said 15%, and then 36% of us said 25%. All right, thank you for sharing that poll. Okay, so I want to share with you the answer on your screen. So I'll show you with people. So seems to be that 1 in 7, or about 15% of people worldwide. So anyone who put 15% in there, woohoo, you won the prize of kudos as well. About 15% of people worldwide are thought to be neurodiverse or neurodivergent. Now, if you remember that spectrum I showed you just a few slides ago with that infinity on there, I would suggest the people who answered 72% would probably be more accurate, but I don't have that proof. Like, I'm only going by polls that have been taken. Because why do you all think? I'm going to pose that question to you. Why do you think I'm saying that I think the number is a little bit higher? In chat, what you think? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. Your answers, all of them I see in chat, are absolutely correct. So people are misdiagnosed, right? Or underdiagnosed. People suffer in silence. Thank you, Maria. Stigma, right? There's a stigma. Anytime there's a stigma surrounding anything, people are going to try to keep it to themselves, right? They're not so quick to share, right? So if there's a poll, of course, if there's a stigma attached to it, I'm not taking the poll, right? There's a stigma. I don't want anybody to look at me differently, right? I don't feel safe. I don't trust. Don't want to share. People might not be open about it. Yeah. Corey, I like this. As more data comes out, stigma is decreased. There will be more people revealed to be neurodiverse. I absolutely agree with that. So while I'm showing you what the stats say on the screen, I will say that I think that number is probably much higher because remember now, we're talking about, remember those two words, neuro, nervous system, brain, and diverse, human differences. Isn't that all of us to some extent? So good, very good. Thank you all for answering that poll. Okay, so I want you all to meet Cynthia. So Cynthia is a neurodiverse woman with ADHD. She's part of our internal project team. Right? During team meetings, she struggles to keep up with fast-paced discussions and frequently gets overwhelmed by the noise and multiple conversations happening simultaneously. So, as a result, she sometimes finds it difficult to actively participate in the discussions, leading others to perceive her as disengaged or uninterested. Okay. And remember, I said as humans, right, our perceptions are different. Our interactions are different. We see the world differently. We experience the world differently. So in this meeting, imagine Cynthia, like imagine if that's her on that picture. Everyone's talking all at once, all this noise is going on, multiple conversations, and her brain is not registering that. But people on the outside or in the meeting with Cynthia, you know, are thinking, oh, well, she's disengaged. She's uninterested. They're making their own opinions, but she's kind of suffering in silence, right? So I want you to hear more about what type of support we can give Cynthia. So Cynthia communicates her needs to her manager. Now that's very important, communicating, right? But the way someone communicates is when we communicate, when we build that relationship and build trust. No one's going to communicate to someone who they think is going to take what they say and share it with the world or make comments about it or ridicule them, right? They have to feel completely safe in order to share, right? So for the managers on the call, you have to make a safe environment and build that relationship so people will share and so that you understand, or else they'll suffer in silence, right? So Cynthia, she explains her challenges with sensory overload and the need for clear communication. So the team adjusts meeting formats. So now that she shared, she felt comfortable. So, probably her manager adjusted the formats to ensure like a more structured and inclusive discussion, providing agendas like ahead of time and allowing individuals to take turns speaking, right? And that's a pretty reasonable accommodation, right? And then Cynthia's manager also arranges for her to have a quiet workplace or workspace or headphones, right, to minimize distractions during focused work. And so that's like when you're in the office. Like I work from home, so I always have quiet around me. And when you're in the office, that's different, right? There's people walking by, talking, all of that can be very distracting. And remember, I said there's no standard brain, right? So what do you all think about those accommodations? Jennifer, I see your comment, being in silence, trying to cope themselves. Christy, it's taboo to speak on. Yeah. hmm Yeah, Michelle. Robert's very reasonable. Reasonable. Michelle. Thank you. Reasonable and impactful. Yeah, I've had leaders talk to me after this training and say, well, what's really reasonable? Like, what are accommodations that's reasonable? And it differs from department to department, manager to manager, industry, company. It depends, right? Like, if you're working on an assembly line or in a warehouse, of course, it's not reasonable to wear headphones, right? So it varies from business to business, department to department, even in the same company, department to department. So you have to look at what's reasonable for your business to accommodate. If it's not going to be unreasonable or hardship on your business, and you really want to accommodate people, then you can do it. But again, you have to look on a case by case basis. So I can't say headphones are reasonable if maybe the phone's ringing or something you have to hear. Maybe there's a danger if you wear headphones. But if it's not a reasonable accommodation, I'll share a quick story with you all. I have a friend who actually has sensory overload, and I didn't really realize exactly the impact on it. So this is a personal story. So I'm going to kind of go off the rails for a second. So bear with me. So we were in Las Vegas. So has anybody been to Las Vegas? You can just shout out yes, no. So in Las Vegas, thank you for the yeses who've been there too. In Las Vegas, they have, in the old part of Las Vegas, they have like a strip, and above it, you can do zip lining. And if you're zip lining, that there's people below that you can see, and they're in different shops, they're buying drinks or food, and it's just really loud. Las Vegas, period. But in this specific area, it's very loud. There's music playing. There's so much going on. And I didn't really, well, Laura, you live there. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. And so I didn't really realize the impact of sensory overload until my friend said, I have to go back to the hotel. And I said, why? Aren't we having fun? And she said, it's too much going on. There's lights, there's music, there's people talking. What happens in Vegas? Thank you. I should have left it in Vegas, right, Craig? But it's when you have sensory overload, all of these things happening at once really affects you and it impacts you. And so we have to say, yes, let's go back to the room because everyone experiences things differently. And so that's the point. All right. So let me take you all's mind back from Vegas and back to coworkers, except for the person who lives in Vegas. Keep your mind there. All right. So I want to share with you all. Thank you, Laura. You do. You have to avoid the whole strip if you have sensory overload. That doesn't impact everyone, right? Because everyone's different. Think about the caterpillar and the snail. Everyone's different. So things impact people differently. And so it's just different brains, right? So I'm going to show you a few famous people that you may or may not know who are neurodivergent. And neurodiversity doesn't often come up in the news. More and more, we're hearing about it. But several years ago, we didn't talk about it at all. But there's so many extraordinary neurodivergent women and men that have made history with their work, right? And their courage and their contributions. So this person on the screen, you may know her, that's Simone Biles. And she's an American gymnast who boasts 30 Olympic and world championship medals. So at a young age, she was diagnosed with ADHD. And she says she isn't ashamed of her ADHD. She's even tweeted about having ADHD and saying she takes medicine for it. And there's nothing to be ashamed of, right? And she's not afraid to let people know. And then let me see if you know this person. I'm sure you do. Jennifer Aniston. She's probably still one of the highest paid actresses in Hollywood, best known for her role in Friends. And so in a 2015 interview, she revealed her struggle with dyslexia. And she said she was diagnosed in her 20s, and she only was diagnosed because she went to get prescription glasses, and that's literally the only reason she knew. So she said she had to wear these, different kind of glasses, and one had a blue lens, one had a red lens, and she had to read a paragraph, and they gave her a quiz. And there were 10 questions on the quiz, and they put like a computer of some sort up to her eyes, and it showed where her eyes went while she was reading. And so her eyes would jump 4 words ahead and then back 2 words. And she said she also had a little bit of a lazy eye, like a crossed eye, which she said they always correct in photos. But before she was diagnosed, she just thought she wasn't smart. She just thought she couldn't retain anything, right? And so all of you all who put in the chat earlier, misdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, right? People go through life thinking, I just can't retain anything. There may be a reason, right? And so that's Jennifer Aniston's story. This person on the screen, you may know, is Billie Eilish. She's famous for her music. And right, Christy, you never know, right? Because these are people with superpowers, right? These are millionaires. These are people who are really using their superpowers to their benefit, right? And so Billie Eilish was diagnosed with Tourette's syndrome when she was a child, where she gets like physical tics. And so she wrote on Instagram about it after her fans or someone published a YouTube of her with her tics. So someone kind of outed her, right? And so she talked about it. And she said she never wanted people to think of time they thought of her. And so, but she said it's a constant part of her life. So now she's taught herself ways to suppress her tics, right? Because she doesn't want them to be distracting in certain situations. But it's so good that she's speaking out, because her speaking out would make other people feel more comfortable. All right, so let's see who else we have. Does anyone know who this is? I'm not going to say this person's name. I want you all to tell me if you know who this is. Bonnie, yes. Okay, you all know. I've literally asked this question so many times, and people are like, no clue, because this is what Dan Aykroyd looks like now. They remember Dan Aykroyd from Ghostbusters and the Blues Brothers, but so he was diagnosed with a form of autism in his 50s. So think about that. If we would have taken a poll before when he was 49, he would not have said he had autism, right? He would not have checked that box. So he wouldn't even been included in that poll. So some people get diagnosed later in life. Yes, Christine, that is Dan Aykroyd. How he looks now. Like, we're used to, you know, like I said, the Blues Brothers, Ghostbusters. But yeah, he is involved in several charities and organizations to, bring awareness to autism, right? So, okay. So our third poll of the day. Do you know someone, including yourself, who is neurodivergent? Now that you've seen this infinity that's on your screen, so those of you who are unsure, do you know now someone that you know, including yourself, who is neurodivergent? Thank you, Ashlyn. I like that comment. All right, let's give it 30 more seconds. All right, so you see it in the chat. So let's see the kind of final score. So you see these numbers kind of speak for themselves. because earlier we had a lot more no's and unsures. We still have no and unsure at a smaller percentage, but really, this is why we have to learn and understand neurodiversity. And it's a new term because you probably in the beginning knew some of these things on the infinity, right? But maybe didn't know they were lumped under the kind of term of neurodiversity. But we want to learn about it so that everyone can feel safe and included. And, like Ashlyn put in the chat, 4 of her kids are in this neurodiversity spectrum, and they have all these superpowers. And think about parents, right? If we stay in the unfamiliar, if we don't learn about neurodiversity, we won't hire the talent into our organizations. We won't place them with our clients because we're unfamiliar, right? So that's why we have to learn about brain differences and learn that it's normal for everyone to have different brain and experience and see the world and interpret the world in different ways. And that's what's normal. Right. So we all have different minds, and that's a beautiful thing. So I would love to hear, if you all, I know we're going to put it in chat, but if anyone has any specific triggers they want to share, someone that has triggers or something that we should know or learn about neurodiversity in this workplace and co-works, right? What do we need to know about our employees? And I'll share, I always have stories, but I'll share one work-related story, not Las Vegas, where I had a coworker who said that they were triggered when, like in Teams, even on our phones, like we see it on our cell phones, but in Teams, when someone's writing to you, there's like little bubbles or something that pops up that shows you somebody's writing something. So this person shared that every time they would see bubbles from their leader like pop up, because sometimes people just keep Teams open. I keep Teams open because you want to see what's coming through, right? And so you're seeing these bubbles. So they saw the bubbles, but then the person stops writing, right? So, and you all have been there where maybe you got busy, you stopped writing, you go on to do something else. Well, this person, that's a trigger for them. And so they said, they get real anxious and then they stop working because then their brain goes to, what's wrong? What did I do wrong? Well, why did they stop typing? Well, what were they typing in the first place? And it's just such a trigger for that person. And when this person shared this with me, it was in one of these trainings, and their manager was actually on the call. And the manager didn't even know before the training that this person felt that way. But once they knew, then they could say, take a step back and say, I can accommodate that. If I want to type something, maybe I'll put it in an email instead so that this person won't feel the anxiety of someone typing and then stop typing and then someone typing. I'll just put an email, and then when I'm ready to send it, I'll hit send, or I'll pick up the phone and call you, right? And so it's those type of things with understanding others. That way, instead of the golden rule of treat others the way you want to be treated, you just change it, treat others the way they need to be treated so that you can work together and be more productive. Now, let me see what's going on in chat. All right. Yes, Maria, I would say PTSD would be included in this because PTSD is part of that trauma. I don't know if you remember seeing on there, but it was a bubble that should have had trauma on there. And so, yes, that is included. Depression is included. And so PTSD, is different for each person, anxiety, depression, trauma. And so it all falls within brain differences, thinking differences, trauma. So yeah, that would be included. And because everything's not on that infinity, it's probably so much more. Okay, Christy, in addition to what we already may be doing with your expertise, what do you suggest we can do if we work with someone that has very high anxiety and gets upset rather quickly? Thank you for that question. I would suggest, now again, I'm not a brain surgeon or a therapist, but what I would suggest is building relationships with people and understanding what the other person's going through, talking, communicating, right? Because if someone, gets upset or has anxiety, then we have to work with it. My very best friend has social anxiety, and I have to understand, step back, that what works for me in social situations does not work for her. And so we have to sort of come to a compromise of how, just like the caterpillar and the snail, me and my best friend are just like that. And so we have to come up with a way that we can both get through this together and be successful. So I would suggest building relationships, listening to others, finding out what people's triggers are, and letting that person be able to share. Now, don't diagnose anyone ourselves because we don't know. So that's something we should never do, to say, oh, someone has this or someone has that, because we don't know what someone's diagnosed with. But what we can do is listen to them and find out what those triggers are, so that we, as human beings, we can say, okay, I'm not going to trigger whatever the trigger is, right? So whatever is making someone upset or triggering in teams, like the example I gave you, try to find out, what is it that triggers you, so I don't be the one that contributes to that trigger. And I know that's a quick answer, but I hope that makes sense, Christine. Yep, some take instruction very literal, and when given different directives several times, it can become deflating and they shut down. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Every time someone eats, they cannot hear it because it is sensory overload. When it's quiet in the room, yes. Cameras off makes it difficult to concentrate on how the message is being received and read, and read the audience. Okay. Yes. And all of these things, camera on, camera off, right? That's a simple question you can ask your staff or your peers. Do you want camera on or camera off? I'm sure if, when I talk to Michelle and the Ability Works group, and if I said, you know what, I want everyone's camera on for this training, that would trigger some people, right? I don't always want my camera on, but some people do. And so again, because we all think differently, we experience it differently, and just learning, like if someone can keep their camera off, why not, right? If they're productive. All right, so Kristen, I'm reading what's in chat. You have a friend that's having a hard time getting along with at first. It seemed like we were always arguments and disagreements, and I just could not understand where the disconnect was. Then I found out they were on the autism spectrum and took things very literally and would speak very literally. The whole time I thought they were angry, and they found me very confusing. We have since figured out how to communicate effectively so we both understand what the other means. I love these that you're putting in chat because, it's about learning the other person. That's it. Because if you don't know somebody and you're unfamiliar, or if you're getting to know someone, then you're going to make up in your head a story, right? And you want to hear the story from the other person. You don't want to have to make it up. So you want to make people feel comfortable, so they feel comfortable sharing with you, right? If they feel comfortable, then you can say, oh, okay, great. Now that I know that, I am going to watch how I say things, because if you take them literal, then we may have some sort of tension. Let's figure out how to say things a little bit differently so we can still be friends, or like the caterpillar and snail, go to the party together. So thank you for those that you're putting in chat. I can't read them all because I know we're about at time, but thank you. So I just wanted to show you a couple things before I hand it back over to Maryam. Great minds don't think alike. Just remember that. Great minds do not think alike. We all think differently. So we have to understand that there's benefits to having a neurodivergent brain, and there's superpowers. And if we don't learn anything else today, think of that. Great minds don't think alike. And we can create a more inclusive culture that's more inclusive of neurodiversity if we do certain things. Listen to understand. Listen to understand, people. Not listen so that we can comment. Listen to understand. Ask questions and create genuine relationships. I said that several times today. Be patient. Don't be quick to judge. Be ready and willing to accommodate. Continue this conversation and educate others. We have children growing up that we want people to understand them, right? Especially in the workplace. Foster a culture of empathy and openness. Use respectful, preferred language. Don't assume. Don't give anyone a label. Leaders avoid giving vague instructions. Explain mistakes in private. Communication is the key. Identify people's strengths, not their weaknesses, their strengths. And recognize that no two people are the same. So I'm going to end there and turn it back over to Marianne. Michelle will have these slides, so you can share them out with the team and the video, so that if you all want to share that video in your team meetings or talk about it, please do so. Michelle will have everything. Natalie and Marianne will all have it. So thank you all for your attention, your engagement. Thank you to your executive team and everyone that's here today. So Marianne.
Thank you, Victoria. On behalf of the Ability Works ERG group, we really appreciate you taking the time to speak with the organization today. DEIB spans various dimensions and is centered on nurturing inclusivity and belonging. Neurodiversity is one of those aspects that affects us directly or through someone we know, which is why it's important to prioritize leading and communicating with empathy. On behalf of the Ability Works resource group, I'd like to say another huge thank you to you, Victoria, for your wonderful presentation, and thank you to the DEIB Council and everyone who joined and participated in today's call. All your support is greatly appreciated. If anyone is interested in joining the Ability Works ERG or has any questions, there will be a link in the chat that you can complete, or you can reach out directly to the DEIB Council via email. After this presentation, there will be a short survey for today's event. If you could please take just a few moments and fill it out when you get a chance, that would be great. And thank you again, everybody, and have a wonderful afternoon.